Her hands trembled as she closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch echoing louder than it should have in the empty apartment. Silence pressed against her skin, thick and suffocating, like a reminder of every conversation she never dared to have. She sank into the couch, scrolling through messages that never came, feeling that familiar ache, part longing, part shame. It was not just about him, the one who stopped reaching out. It was about the echo of a wound carved long before he appeared, the wound of a child waiting at the window for footsteps that never returned. And in that pause, in the emptiness of the room, the shadow stirred, the part of her she had always tried to silence, whispering truths she did not want to face. The human psyche does not forget. What is pushed down into shadow waits, patiently, demanding recognition in the most inconvenient moments. Carl Jung warned of this, that what we deny in ourselves returns disguised, often as fate. She believed she was choosing men who would love her, but it was not choice. It was compulsion, the unconscious loyalty to her earliest wound. Do you feel that your silence mirrors his indifference? Each breath carried a weight she could not name. Her body curled inward, shoulders tight as if protecting a secret she did not consciously remember. Beneath her ribs lived the child who learned that being small and quiet was safer than asking too much. That child still whispered the rules: don't cry, don't need, don't speak. But the silence became a cage, and the cage became an identity. This is the shadow's way, offering safety at the cost of aliveness. Heavy, isn't it? Yet Jung insisted, the shadow is not only the darkness you fear, it is also the vitality you have repressed. Within that silence, buried under shame, hides the feminine power of voice, of truth, of boundaries. The very qualities she believes make her unlovable are the keys to her becoming whole. This paradox is cruel and liberating at once. To heal, she must turn toward what terrifies her most, her own unmet need. Imagine standing before a mirror that reflects not your surface but every abandoned version of yourself. The girl who wanted to scream but stayed quiet. The teenager who laughed when she wanted to cry. The woman who smiled while dying inside. They are all there, waiting. And every time she avoids that mirror, she repeats the cycle. Do you see how the shadow keeps you loyal to pain? The descent begins here, in recognizing that what feels like rejection today is often the echo of rejection long past. The partner who withholds affection is the phantom of the parent who withheld attention. The empty text thread is the reincarnation of the empty chair at the dinner table. Without awareness, she will continue to play out the old drama on a new stage, always seeking resolution where it will never come. The cost of not seeing is endless repetition. Still, something stirs beneath the ache, a faint rebellion. The shadow is not only a wound but also a guardian, holding back her raw power until she is ready to wield it. That is the secret Jung left hidden in plain sight. Individuation is not about becoming perfect, but about integrating what has been exiled. The silence she resents may one day become the stillness from which her true voice rises, but only if she dares to listen. The apartment remains silent, but the air has changed. The ache in her chest is no longer only grief, it is a summons. She senses dimly that the very thing she runs from might contain the key to her becoming. And so the question lingers, burning quietly beneath her ribs. What if the shadow you fear most is the place where your feminine power waits? She dreams of standing on a dimly lit stage, faceless figures watching, their eyes piercing, their silence suffocating. She opens her mouth to speak, but no sound comes, only a trembling breath. Then from the far corner, a younger version of herself steps forward, small, fragile, clutching a broken doll. That child looks up with eyes wide and pleading, silently asking, "Will you finally speak for me?" She wakes with her heart pounding, her chest tight, the dream clinging like cobwebs. Dreams like these are not accidents. They are the psyche's secret messages. Jung called them compensations. What consciousness denies, the unconscious reveals. And here, the denied voice has returned to demand expression. The shadow manifests in many disguises. Sometimes it is the lover who pulls away when you reach for closeness. Sometimes it is the tightness in your throat when you want to say no but whisper yes. Sometimes it is the shame that floods your body after you dare to express need. Each is a messenger, carrying the same truth. The parts you bury do not vanish, they live through you. Have you noticed how patterns repeat no matter how fiercely you vow to change them? The child within is not just a memory. She is alive in the body, in the trembling hands, in the tears that rise tea. Quickly, trauma is not a story of the past. It is a presence in the nervous system, shaping every reaction. The Stoics taught that suffering arises less from events and more from how we interpret them. Yet what happens when the interpreter itself is wounded, when every silence is heard as abandonment, every conflict as rejection? Then even the smallest disappointment becomes unbearable. You feel this, don't you? The exhaustion of carrying wounds that never seem to close. And still within that child lies the seed of resilience. She survived by fragmenting, by dimming her light, by shrinking. That was not weakness, that was brilliance in the face of danger. To honor her is not to erase her pain, but to see her strategy for what it was, a temporary shelter. But now, what once protected has become a prison. The woman longs to step beyond, yet the child clings to old rules. This tension is the threshold of individuation. Jung spoke of the anima, the feminine soul image, appearing in dreams as a guide through the darkness. Sometimes she appears as a wounded girl, sometimes as a fierce woman cloaked in fire. Both are true, both necessary. For the feminine power is not softness alone, it is also the blade of truth, the refusal to be diminished. To integrate her means to accept both tenderness and ferocity. Which part of her do you fear most? The softness that might be rejected, or the fire that might be punished? The body remembers. Shoulders curve inward to shield the heart, breath shortens to avoid being noticed, voice lowers to escape scrutiny. These are not random habits, they are embodied history. Somatic healing reminds us that to reclaim the feminine is not only a thought exercise, it is a full-body revolt. To breathe deeply, to stand tall, to speak firmly are not trivial acts. They are rebellions against the very structures that once demanded your silence. Heavy, isn't it? Yet the shadow resists integration. It whispers, "Stay quiet, it is safer." It warns, "If you show your true self, you will be abandoned again." And so the woman finds herself trapped in an endless cycle, oscillating between yearning for freedom and retreating into the familiar ache. The price of avoiding the shadow is stagnation, the slow death of unlived life. Do you recognize how many years can be lost to waiting for permission that will never come? The dream of the child lingers. Her eyes still plead, her silence still pierces. The woman cannot escape the question, if I do not speak for her, who will? The shadow waits not as an enemy but as a doorway. Yet the doorway demands a toll, the courage to feel what was once unbearable. Will you walk through, or will you remain at the threshold, repeating the cycle? The days pass, yet the inner summons grows louder, pressing against her ribs like an unspoken scream. She notices it in subtle ways. The sharp sting in her throat when she swallows her opinions at work, the burning behind her eyes when she watches others speak freely, the heavy silence that follows her home like a shadow stitched to her heels. Every moment she denies her truth, the body protests. Jung warned that what we repress festers. What we bury alive returns as symptoms, addictions, and patterns we cannot break. The psyche will not be silenced forever. And so the confrontation begins. Shadow work is not romantic. It is raw, unsettling, like walking into a dark forest alone at midnight. The trees groan, the air thickens, and every sound seems to threaten. Yet the forest is not the enemy, it is the path. She must sit with the discomfort, the racing pulse, the memories that claw their way back. Do you feel the terror of letting the wound finally be seen? The child appears again, not in a dream this time, but in a memory so vivid it steals her breath. She remembers the night she cried into her pillow, small hands gripping the sheets, praying someone would hear. No one came. That loneliness has followed her into every relationship, shaping her expectations, teaching her to settle for breadcrumbs. The memory hurts, but beneath the pain is clarity. This is the root. The shadow is not random. It is the unhealed child demanding recognition. Heavy, isn't it? To face the shadow, she must resist the urge to analyze it away. Jung knew that the psyche speaks in images, not logic. The trembling child, the suffocating silence, the locked throat, these are symbols of psychic truth. To dismiss them is to abandon herself again. Instead, she must lean in, breathing through the tightness, placing a hand over her chest as if to say, "I see you, I will not run this time." This act, though small, is revolutionary. Can you feel how radical it is to offer compassion, where once there was only shame? The archetypes stir as she enters this inner terrain. The mother who nurtures and suffocates. The maiden, innocent but bound by passivity. The huntress, fierce yet feared. Each archetype reflects both shadow and possibility, demanding balance rather than exile. She begins to recognize that the power she envies in others, the bold voice, the unshakable presence, exists also in her, hidden in the very qualities she has suppressed. What if the silence you loathe is the soil from which your roar will grow? Her body shakes as the memories flood. She wants to run, to distract, to numb. But she remembers the Stoics. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Sitting with the shadow is an act of defiance, a declaration that she will no longer be ruled by ghosts. Each tear shed is not weakness but release. The nervous system learns slowly, but with each breath, with each gentle acknowledgement, the old fear loosens its grip. Can you sense how the body softens when truth is finally spoken, even in whispers? Still, the shadow tests her. Old voices echo, "You are too much, you are not enough, you are unlovable." These words cut deep, for they once kept her in line, obedient, silent. But now she begins to question them. Who decided these rules? Who benefits from her silence? The realization is sharp, almost blinding. The very forces that silenced her are terrified of her power. And if they feared it, perhaps it is because it is real. The confrontation reaches a peak when she finally dares to speak aloud what she has always hidden. "I needed you, and you weren't there." The words shake, crack, but they exist outside her now. They cannot be taken back. In speaking, she breaks the pact of silence that bound her to the past. Her chest expands, her breath deepens, and for the first time she feels a glimmer of space inside. But with this space comes a dangerous question. If the silence no longer defines me, who am I becoming? The question unsettles her, echoing in the hollow spaces that silence once occupied. Identity built on absence crumbles when absence is no longer the anchor. She feels unsteady, like standing barefoot on shifting ground, the earth trembling with every breath. Yet beneath the unease lies possibility, a horizon not yet visible but sensed in the marrow. Transformation begins in this trembling. The death of the old self always feels like chaos before rebirth. Do you feel the same fear when you consider letting go of the patterns that kept you safe? The psyche rarely surrenders without resistance. Nightmares intensify, relationships strain, the body aches with old tensions resurfacing. It is as if the shadow, sensing its impending integration, fights harder to be heard. She dreams again of the stage, but this time the child is not alone. A woman cloaked in fire steps forward, eyes fierce, voice thunderous, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. The anima has revealed herself, no longer a fragment but a guide. She whispers not comfort but challenge. "You cannot claim me without burning away what binds you." Heavy, isn't it? In waking life, the tests appear. A friend dismisses her feelings, expecting her to stay agreeable. A lover pulls away, assuming she will swallow the pain. For the first time, she does not collapse inward. Her chest still tightens, her palms still sweat, but she speaks. "This is not enough, I need honesty, I deserve presence." The words shock her as much as they shock him. They taste like fire and freedom. Can you remember the last time you allowed your truth to escape, even though your voice shook? Jung taught that individuation is not comfort but confrontation, the reconciliation of opposites within. Here she embodies it, fear and courage, vulnerability and strength, shadow and light. The paradox does not resolve by choosing one side but by holding both. She realizes she is not only the wounded child nor only the fiery anima, she is the vessel that contains them both. The feminine power is wholeness, the refusal to exile any part of herself. This is why the shadow was terrifying. It held half of her being. Her body shifts with this recognition. Shoulders straighten, breath deepens, gaze steadies. These are not small gestures but somatic declarations. I belong here. She feels the ground beneath her feet, no longer as shifting sand but as soil capable of holding roots. The silence that once suffocated now feels different, spacious, waiting, a canvas for her voice. Do you sense how the very symbols that once imprisoned you can transform into sources of strength? Still, the work is not finished. The psyche tests again, whispering doubts in the quiet hours. What if you are too much? What if they leave? What if you fail? But this time she does not argue or collapse. She places a hand on her heart, breathing with the fear, acknowledging it without submission. This is individuation in action, not the erasure of shadow but the companionship of it. The fear remains, but so does her power. The child within begins to change. No longer crouched and trembling, she rises, tentative but steady, placing her small hand into the woman's. Their eyes meet, mirrors of survival and resilience. The past is not erased but integrated. Every moment of silence, every ache, every lonely night becomes part of her strength, woven into the tapestry of her becoming. And in this integration, the haunting question returns, sharper than before. If your silence was a cage, what will you build now with your voice set free? The voice, once a fragile whisper, begins to ripple outward like water breaking stone. At first it trembles, uncertain, but each expression strengthens it, each boundary set, each truth spoken, each refusal to shrink. She notices how the world responds differently now. Some recoil, unsettled by her clarity. Others lean in, magnetized by her presence. This is the paradox of feminine power. It does not seek to please, it reshapes the space it enters. Do you feel the unease of realizing that not everyone will celebrate your awakening? Archetypes shift around her. The maiden gives way to the huntress, bow drawn, eyes sharp. She is no longer content with passivity. She seeks, chooses, acts. The lover awakens too, not as submission but as radiance, her capacity for intimacy rooted in self-worth rather than desperation. Jung warned that ignoring these forces leaves them twisted in shadow, but integrated they are life-giving. She discovers that what she feared, anger, desire, hunger, are not enemies but sources of vitality. What if the fire you have suppressed is the very energy you need to live fully? Her body mirrors the transformation. Where once breath was shallow, it now flows freely. Where shoulders curled inward, they now open like wings. The nervous system, long coiled in vigilance, begins to trust safety. Yet safety does not come from others finally staying. It comes from her own refusal to abandon herself again. This is the essence of healing, not the promise that pain will never return, but the assurance that she will not leave herself when it does. Heavy, isn't it? The Stoics whisper across time, you cannot control the world, but you can govern your response. She sees now that her worth is not dictated by a lover's attention or a parent's absence. Self-worth is not a gift to be given, it is an inheritance to be reclaimed. She belongs by virtue of existence, not performance. Every no she speaks, every silence she breaks, every need she honors is a declaration of sovereignty. Can you feel how terrifying and liberating it is to need no one's permission to exist? But awakening carries cost. Old relationships strain under the weight of her new voice. Some accuse her of being selfish, difficult, changed. They are right, she is changed. The self that once bent and broke to keep others comfortable is gone. This loss stings, but the alternative, remaining silent, fragmented, is unbearable. Negative stakes are clear. To betray herself again would be to die slowly. Do you see the sharpness of this choice in your own life? The shadow, once enemy, now stands beside her. It no longer whispers threats but offers guidance. Each time doubt arises, the shadow reminds her, remember the child, remember the silence, remember the fire. These memories, once chains, are now compass points. Individuation is not the erasure of wounds but their alchemy into wisdom. She realizes the shadow was never there to destroy her. It was waiting for her to become strong enough to face it. A new dream comes. She stands again on the stage, but this time the faceless crowd listens as she speaks. Her voice carries, resonant and steady. The child sits in the front row, no longer trembling but smiling, doll repaired, eyes shining. The woman cloaked in fire stands behind her, radiant, protective, whole. The dream is no longer a nightmare but a vision. The silence has been transmuted into voice, the wound into power. And the lingering question remains, fierce and alive. Now that you hold your voice, how will you use it? The world outside has not softened, yet her perception of it has shifted. Where once every cold glance pierced like rejection, now it registers as information, not indictment. She understands that others project their shadows too, their own unspoken fears shaping how they see her. Instead of collapsing beneath their indifference, she sees the deeper pattern. Everyone wrestles with their hidden selves. Jung insisted that what irritates us in others often reveals what we deny in ourselves. She wonders, when his silence wounded her, was it also a mirror of the silence she kept inside? She walks through the city with a different cadence, feet grounded, eyes lifted. Even the small acts, ordering coffee without apologizing, saying no to an unnecessary favor, holding her gaze when someone tries to diminish her, become rites of passage. Each choice reaffirms her sovereignty. Each moment of alignment with truth adds weight to her presence. Feminine power is not theatrical. It is the steady fire that refuses to dim. Do you feel the shift in your own body when you imagine living without apology? But healing is not a straight ascent. Some nights she feels the old ache earn a hollow space in her chest, a whisper that she is unworthy. Instead of fighting it, she learns to sit with it, hand resting over her heart. The shadow has not disappeared, it walks beside her, reminding her that wholeness includes both light and dark. This is not failure, it is integration. The child's tears are still honored, but they no longer define her. Heavy, isn't it, the realization that healing means carrying both sorrow and strength together. The archetypes circle again, revealing their dual faces. The mother now nurtures her inner child, not from guilt but from devotion. The huntress channels her fire into action, cutting away what no longer serves. The lover radiates fullness, choosing intimacy not from hunger but from abundance. Each archetype, once distorted by shadow, now sings in harmony. This symphony is individuation, the unique self, whole and undivided, moving through the world with clarity. Can you sense which archetype in you is waiting to be integrated? Flashbacks arise, but they feel different now. She remembers the nights of loneliness, the unanswered calls, the silence that once suffocated. Yet when she revisits those images, she no longer feels powerless. Instead, she sees them as chapters of initiation, the trials that forged her strength. The empty chair at the dinner table is no longer just a symbol of absence. It is also the space where she learned to listen to her own voice. Pain becomes teacher, shadow becomes ally. The red thread of her story weaves from wound to wisdom. The stakes of ignoring this path become clearer too. She sees women around her still trapped in silence, still repeating patterns of abandonment, still mistaking pain for love. She feels their ache in her bones, recognizing the version of herself who once walked that path. To refuse the shadow is to remain fractured, to live only half a life. To embrace it is to risk discomfort but to claim wholeness. Which risk feels heavier to you, the pain of repression or the labor of becoming? One evening she stands before the mirror, not just to look but to meet herself. She sees both the child and the woman, both the trembling and the fierce. She whispers, "I will not abandon you again." For the first time, the reflection feels complete, not as fragments stitched together but as one being. The silence inside is no longer suffocating but sacred, a quiet wellspring of strength. And as her gaze lingers, the final question glows like an ember. Now that the shadow has revealed your power, will you dare to embody it fully? She steps into her days with a presence that cannot be feigned. It is not loud or demanding but unmistakable, like the still gravity of a mountain that shapes the valley around it. People feel it before they understand it. Her laughter no longer masks pain. Her silence no longer hides submission. It is the silence of a woman who knows her worth, who chooses when to speak and when to withhold, not out of fear but out of sovereignty. Do you feel the difference between silence as cage and silence as power? Life begins to test her new embodiment. An old lover returns, offering the same half-presence that once made her ache. Where she once would have bent, she now stands straight, meeting his gaze with clarity. "No," she says, voice steady, "I deserve more than crumbs." The words cut ties to years of hunger, releasing her from the loop that bound her to repetition. Individuation always demands sacrifice, the sacrifice of illusions, of safety, of the comfort of old pain. What illusions in your own life would you need to burn to be free? She notices her relationships shifting. Some people withdraw, unsettled by the force of her authenticity. Others draw near, emboldened by her example, recognizing in her courage the permission to claim their own. This is the ripple of individuation. The healing of one soul becomes an invitation to others. Jung believed the most powerful influence we have on the collective is the work we do within. Each boundary she sets, each truth she honors, becomes an offering to the world. Heavy, isn't it? The weight of knowing your healing is not just for you. The child within is no longer a phantom clinging to the past. She dances now in dreams, laughing, whole, her doll unbroken. The fiery woman who once seemed distant has merged with her, no longer a separate guide but an aspect of the self. Together they are one: innocence and power, tenderness and ferocity, shadow and light. This integration is the ascent, the return from the underworld not empty-handed but carrying the jewel of authenticity. Do you see how the very wound that once haunted you can become the proof of your strength? The mirror moment comes in the quiet dawn. She sits by the window, hand wrapped around a warm cup, the world still half asleep. A thought arises, clear and sharp. All along, the love I was starving for was the love I had withheld from myself. The realization pierces and soothes at once, a truth too simple and too vast to ignore. She does not need to chase what was absent. She needs to embody what was hidden. The feminine power is not found in being chosen, but in choosing herself. The red thread of her story tightens into resolution. The door that once slammed shut in silence becomes a symbol of opening, the ache in her chest now a reminder of her aliveness, the trembling voice transformed into steady fire. Individuation is not an end but a lifelong practice, a daily vow. I will not abandon myself again. The shadow that once terrified her is now her ally, the guardian of her wholeness. And with this, the loop closes, the fear of rejection dissolving into the radiance of self-belonging. She turns outward toward the listener, toward you. The story is not hers alone. It echoes in your chest, in your silences, in your unspoken truths. You too carry a child waiting to be heard, a shadow guarding hidden fire. The question is no longer abstract, no longer distant. It is immediate, burning, insistent. Now that you know the shadow you fear holds the feminine power you seek, will you dare to step into it?